your busy schedules to be with us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, you'll find that your mics are muted because we just need to do that. If you've been here before, you're pretty familiar with the routine. So as you come in, just notice that your mics are muted. We do have a chat roll. So if you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat roll. Jamie and Paula are monitoring the chat roll here on Zoom. Mark Ye is over on Facebook Live monitoring that chat roll. So put your questions in as we talk to our guests here in a little bit. And Ryan or Shelby or John, somebody here in the studio, will get them over to James and we'll get those answered if we don't answer them throughout the normal way of questioning. So thanks again for joining us. We're going to give people just a couple of minutes here to get on with us, as we know it takes a few minutes to log everybody in that's coming on board. So really appreciate it. You know, they tease me all the time because I'm always giving you the weather update from Kentucky. We're not in Kentucky today. We're in Florida. So it's hot. Enough said. It's just hot. And going to be steamy later today. They tell me. I felt like it was steamy this morning when I walked out of the hotel room. The big news here today at Educational Opportunities Lakeland, Florida, is there was an alligator in the parking lot. Huge excitement out there. So I walked through from one building to the other, and I saw all these people gathering in the parking lot, and I thought, what's going on? And so being from Kentucky, I don't have alligators in the parking lot. I went and took a picture. So I'll share that with you a little bit later. So once again, thanks for joining this morning. We're really glad that you're here. We're giving everybody a chance to join in. So if you're just now getting on board, your mics are muted. There's a chat roll, an opportunity to gather and ask questions through that. Mark and Paula and Jamie are monitoring that, and they will make sure that we get those questions if we do not get them answered by our special guests in the normal course of questioning. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share with you a little bit about our familiarization tours. You know, I have a bad habit of using EO lingo. As I did when I was a pastor at the church, I use church lingo a lot. And so occasionally I have said, evidently on this webinar, FAM tours. And everybody then messaged me later and said, Tom, what is a FAM? So a FAM is a familiarization tour, and many of you know that. We offer to our host at a discounted price to give you the opportunity to travel to a place that maybe you haven't been before or would really like to go, so that you can go out and see and experience that place, come back then, and be able to talk with your guests and your parishioners and friends and people you might be recruiting to go with you on a trip. Say, hey, I've been there, done that. This is what this looks like, and this is why I'm excited about it. So when I say FAM, I'm talking about familiarization tour. Familiarization is self-explanatory, I think. So we have a FAM trip coming back from Egypt. They're coming back. They're on the way back right now. So they should be almost home. They've been in Egypt the past week. I think Ryan's throwing up some photos there now. They had a really great trip. You can see the number of them there. They got to do a Nile River cruise, which was exciting. They went to Aswan and Luxor and Cairo. They saw the Sphinx and they saw the pyramids and they saw temples. And I was just there about a month ago myself, and it's a great, great trip. I believe watching all the Facebook stuff, it seemed like that everybody was having a super time. And so if you've not been and done that trip, if we give it as an opportunity as a post trip and to our Holy Land trips oftentimes. So I would encourage you to explore that a little bit and consider doing Egypt as one of your optional post trips or pre-trips. That Nile River cruise is really, really super. And I learned so much, and it was great. I'd go back again in a heartbeat. So we also have a FAM trip that we are offering a little bit later to Italy. We're excited. Italy is starting to open back up and give opportunity to do that. You can see there now it's August the 2nd through the 8th. The price is $20.98 from New York, $21.98 for your spouses. That means you got to get yourself to our international departure city there. But really looking forward to that trip. It's unique in that on this particular trip, dinners are not provided. And we did that specifically because you're in Italy and you're going to be in all these great cities that are known for a variety of different specialty food items. So at dinner, rather than having dinner at your hotel, we thought it would be an opportunity for you to get out and do a little bit of that. So dinner in different restaurants at night. So check out that Italy FAM. It's a great opportunity. It's not a FAM that we offer very often. So it might be something that you would want to do. If you've ever considered Italy, check that one out. Oberammergau. Well, we've been waiting for this one now for 11 years, going on 12 years now. We thought we'd have to wait 10. We're excited. Oberammergau is ready to, in the Passion Play, we're going to offer a FAM for that. That is going to be September the 7th through the 13th. Pricing at $17.98. I think I see on the screen there for sure of that. If you've not been to that area, it's beautiful. It's probably one of the prettiest places I've ever been. I love the wide open spaces there that you see, and I would encourage you to do that. Folks, we're hopefully coming to the end of a pandemic. So to go and celebrate with people who survived a pandemic over 400 years ago and are still celebrating that seems like a pretty cool thing to do right now. So if you've not scheduled an Oberammergau trip yet, you can go, see it, come back, tell your people about it, and encourage them why they should go. If you're recruiting, please continue to do that. You should be getting an email from us encouraging you that. You know, we're getting quite a few registrations in. We've got some dates that are starting to lock out that we just don't have enough tickets for. The river cruises and the Passion Play are very, very popular again. Holy Land and Passion Play is popular again, that combo. And also then we have the new Mediterranean cruise that we've never got to offer before in a combination with the Passion Play. So I'd encourage you to look those up and see, but the FAM tour is coming up in September. Hope that you'll be able to join us on that. We have a few spots left for that. We're also having a Greek FAM. We're excited about that. That's going to be in November. You can see the dates and the pricing and such up there on that. Going to go up to Thessaloniki. It's going to be a great trip. A lot of places that we don't normally see if you do a Greece cruise. So Mediterranean cruise, Journeys of Paul cruise. So this gets a chance to, for you to expand that a little bit and get a little bit more familiar. We've got to actually have a group going to Greece in 2 weeks. So Greece is reopened, so we're sending our first group back over there that will be there the first week of June. And so we're excited about those folks going. So check out that Greek FAM trip, and we've got several spots still open on that. Give me a call, email, or whatever if you have questions on that. Any of us can help get you registered for that trip. We sadly had to cancel our Holy Land FAM trip. We were supposed to be leaving for the Holy Land right now, today actually, or yesterday, I guess it was. 2 days ago, yeah. We were going to the Holy Land for a FAM trip with several people. We weren't able to do that because of getting everything lined up and had to move the dates back. So we have rescheduled our Holy Land FAMs. We have 2 scheduled now, so pay attention to those, 2 different dates, one in September, and then we'll have another one in January. September the 3rd, we'll have one, and then January the 10th of 2022, we have Holy Land FAM. So if you have friends, pastors, clergy that are thinking about that, please let them know that. We'll be glad to get you information. You can go online and find that through the tour host website, your leaders website. Be glad to help you get that registered. Cruising is restarting. I saw this morning on the news, James, that Royal Caribbean is doing their first pilot or test cruise. And so that's approved out of Florida. Out of Florida. So we're excited about that. Floridians are excited. Cruising is coming back to Florida. It's going to be out of Miami. I was watching the Tampa Bay news this morning. They weren't thrilled that it wasn't there, but they said, we'll take it out of Miami.
We'll take anything at this point.
Yeah, we'll take anything at this point. So really excited about that. Really glad that cruising is coming back. And in conjunction with that, then, we've been talking with the cruise lines, and we have some special things to offer you. We have a Greek island cruise that is going to be with Norwegian Cruise Line. It's going to be on the Jade. It's October the 30th is a sale date for it. The price of that cruise, okay, well, look at this, $22.98. That includes airfare, okay? $22.98 for Greek island cruise on the Norwegian Jade. There's the itinerary Ryan and Shelby and John have put up for you there, so you can see it's a great itinerary. So let us know if you're interested in that. You can find that on the leaders website. We also are working on a different one, another thing that we're working on, a couple of them, but I can't give you all the details yet on those. Being a retired clergy person, I talk to a lot in this role of clergy across the country and know how beat up folks are. It seems like that you can't win. You're on the wrong side of something, whether you're going back too soon in person or not soon enough in person worship, or you're on the wrong side of the political spectrum, or it's just something. And so, I mean, gosh, I've been feeling so sorry for my pastor friends that are struggling out there. So we thought, how can we do to help? So we are putting together a couple of cruises. It's going to be in conjunction with a cruise line. It's on the Adventure of the Seas. You can see the dates there, July the 24th and August the 7th. The details are still being worked out. We have a meeting this afternoon to hopefully get some of those out. But it's going to be more of a pastor retreat that we're doing. We're talking about that there will be an opportunity for a guest speaker, maybe to be on there, but those meetings, things will be optional. If you just want to go sit on the beach or by the pool or whatever, we want you to be able to find a way to relax. And we're trying to find a way to get that price down to such a way that, for you and your spouse and family, that'd be something you'll be able to do this summer, that we just want to give you a break. So we're working on that. Pay attention, look for an email coming out on that from Mark and the marketing department here real soon. We also have another one that we're working on. It's tentative still at this time. It's on the Jewel of the Seas. It's another Greek Isles tour. It's going to be departing on the 28th. What we're doing to that, though, we're going to add a Dubai pre-trip. So if you'd like to pop over to Dubai for a few days first, that will leave on August the 23rd. So we're working on that. So more details that are coming on that. So those are the things we've got kind of in the pot, stirring up, trying to figure out and get moving. But we don't have all those going for sure yet. So want to let you know about those. We got some great stuff for you today. James is here in the studio with us. We got a couple of special guests we have with him here today. He's going to be talking with folks. So James, thanks. Take over. I'll let you introduce Yael for everyone.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks, Tom. It's good to be seeing more and more travel get back online. The president signed the waiver for Alaskan cruising.
For Alaska cruises, right.
Yesterday in the White House. So we'll see some Alaska cruising, I think, by mid-July. So things are moving along, and that's good. And the Europeans have some kind of plan to reopen to Americans. I'm still trying to figure out all the details on that, but things are going the correct direction for travel. So today I'm joined by Yael Golan. She's the director of the Atlanta office for the Israeli Ministry of Tourism, and Yael is here live with us today. And she's been a guest of ours on the webinars in the past, about a year ago, I think, or time flies, but a couple of times. So, but she's here in person. Is this your first trip out of the office or out of the Atlanta area?
I've been on the road for a few weeks. I don't know if I'm your first guest back to the studio, but I'm super excited, and it shows us, I mean, we're in the right direction for income, for, bringing back international travel.
Mm-hmm.
We're also back ourselves having face-to-face meetings.
Right.
And after being virtual for more than a year, we couldn't wait to go back. So again, very happy and thankful to be here today and to talk to you. I know you, the team, and everyone at home probably have a lot of questions. So I'm going to do my best to answer most of them, as we're still trying to figure some things out. It's a changing situation.
Right. So I certainly thank you for being here today. And I want to thank the Ministry of Tourism for pushing ahead with the restart of tourism in Israel. It's taken some courage by the minister to do that, because the health people, a little concerned, but she's been very strong and pushing ahead. So we really thank you for that and all your work. And, and it's a risk, because Israel has worked so hard to really tame the COVID pandemic in the country. There's been a hesitancy to allow the potential new strains with foreign visitors. And in Israel, in my opinion, just looking at it from an outsider, the health ministry is very strong, and but they've done a great job vis-a-vis the rest of the world in bringing the numbers down. And I think I mentioned this a couple last webinar, but I remember in January the numbers were like 80,000 cases, active cases. I looked this morning and it's like 450. So I mean, you can't argue with those numbers. I mean, and I think you have 53 serious cases today, and back in January it was 1,200. So I mean, those are serious gains. And in the U.S., we're getting there. I think we were down to 22,000 new cases yesterday. So, we are, we're getting there. But Israel, you're already there. So, and you don't want to give up all that accomplishment, because you did a lot stricter lockdowns than we did here.
Right.
So everybody went through a lot of pain there. So no one's like, okay, let's throw the doors open and bring everything else back in. So I think naturally, are going to have requirements to come into the country. So we appreciate that and working through those. It's very important. So, and I guess if we left it up to health, we'd all be living in a bubble. So we don't want to do that. So we have to step forward, go out, live life, pursue our faith. And that's what we're here, to talk about today. So, how about, I gave a background for everyone. Give us your thoughts on COVID in Israel and where we stand now with that. And, I've had Zoom calls and I've had people question, is it safe? Is it safe there? On the COVID perspective.
Right.
We're going to talk about safety in the other perspective, but from the pandemic point of view, is it safe?
Right. So you said you did acknowledge us being there in terms of COVID and our low numbers. So I will complete that sentence and say, we are there and we want to stay there. And while our Ministry of Health is conservative, and that is their job, we, on the other side, have been trying to push, even before we knew how, but to push towards opening the borders for incoming travelers. The industry is, of course, struggling, and we have been trying to, acknowledge that and work with the travel industry throughout the past year, but it has been difficult. And while we do want incoming travelers back, we need to be careful. And the bottom line is we want to keep the infection rates low. And that's why we started with this pilot. It started this week. We are having our first group, our first normal travelers group leaving the New York area today with a pastor going to Israel. And you guys are having your group in a couple of weeks. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. And I know that some of you at home probably think that the pilot is very strict. You are right. It is very strict. We started this week. It's supposed to go through June 15. It might be a few weeks, give or take. But if we see that the infection rate doesn't go up, we're going to ease regulation. So we're going to have about 20 groups come in. A group is between 5 to 30 people. Go in with their leader to Israel. The itinerary had to be sent up front. They're going to have designated places in the hotels and in the restaurants. The guide and the driver will be with the group at all time, except for when they sleep. That's up for the group. So the entire duration will be in the pod. And we did that so we could track, and we asked people. They, of course, had to give their consent and their information, because if something happens, we want to be able to contact those people during their stay or after their stay. We care about people's health and safety, not only our citizens,
right,
but the people who are about to enter Israel. Once June 15th or even June 30th come and the infection rate stays lower, we're going to ease regulations, open the borders, or open Israel to more groups. And once we see that everything is still okay, we want to open for FITs. Everybody's waiting for that moment, including the Ministry of Health. But it's a very delicate balance. So I understand all sides. On the tourism perspective, we've been pushing and we will push. And even when we announced the pilot, the Ministry of Health said, no, we have to start from somewhere.
Right. And we appreciate you doing that. So I'll jump ahead here. So the timeline you've given us, I mean, it's obviously we'll see how these first 20 groups go, and then you'll feel like you'll be able to move forward from there if things go well. And if everyone's coming in being vaccinated, things, I don't know why things won't go well, but and certainly, we've been doing this for many decades, leading tourist groups to the Holy Land and pilgrims, and the things have gone successfully. So it's really, just a health perspective here.
We should be okay, but nobody can say that at this point.
Right.
So with most of our eligible population being vaccinated, I believe it's more than 80% from the people that could receive the vaccine. There shouldn't be a problem. However, we've seen how this year changed, different variants, different behaviors. So nobody can promise that right now.
Right. Blessed are the flexible, as I keep telling folks. So tell us a little bit, before we get into all the nitty gritty of what we have to travel, tell us how the Israeli government and the Ministry of Tourism have supported, because we get this question a lot. How have you supported just the everyday folks in the tourism industry that are unemployed at this point? Because I think the government's done well with that, but I wanted you to explain that a little bit.
It is something that probably hasn't been talked about enough. And to be completely honest, I was very excited to hear that, to get that question from you, because it shows that people really care. And it's personally.
Sorry.
Okay.
Echo that. You wanted to echo that.
Yeah.
So it was personally comforting to hear, since the pandemic hit Israel and we closed our borders in March, we were resilient and very quickly understood that the travel industry will need our support. Mm-hmm. So starting April till even now, we gave a 300 million shekels grant to the hotel industry that were allocated in three steps. And I think most of the money has been allocated till now. After that, when the infection rates went down a little bit in Israel last summer, around June, July, we launched a domestic tourism campaign supporting the hotels, the tour guides, the small mom and shop bed and breakfast hospitality venues. And we called Israelis to get out, explore Israel, walk in nature. And we sent tour guides to lead tours for free, so that Israeli families could enjoy the Israeli summer, which is truly great. And then come fall, around September, October, we launched the Green Islands initiatives when we were already, talking about vaccinations. So we designated both the Dead Sea and Eilat as green zones, so Israelis could travel there and again support the industry and keep it alive, because it is an important industry that employs a lot of people directly, but so many others indirectly. And our fear was always going back to zero. So it's much harder to train people from the start if they just leave for another industry. And I know that the travel industry in the entire world has been worried about that. So we rather have people furloughed and not fired, so they could retain their position in the organization. So that was important from us. And really, from the get-go, we were talking about how we always talk about how the American culture and the Israeli culture are different in so many ways, but the government had a crucial job in creating the purple badge. So we had the green passport. The purple badge started way before vaccinations and was only for the hospitality industry. So for hotels, restaurants, and even Israelis were taken aback because the breakfast buffet was over. People had to let the restaurant, even at the hotel, know when are they coming to dine for breakfast or dinner. So a lot of things have changed and are still like that. But we were very much involved from the beginning to have something from the top trickle down to all the establishments in Israel. So we've been trying to be supportive both on the regulation side and both on the monetary side, because we wanted the industry to stay viable.
Right. And of course, then the government as a whole had a very generous unemployment
correct
wage for those in tourism that were
correct
unemployed.
Right.
So it so I from my perspective, I don't know what else could have been done. I mean, you did everything you could in the pandemic, so we certainly appreciate that, because all of us here watching have many friends in the industry or in the hotels and things. So I know that helped many in Israel get through. West Bank Palestine is obviously a whole different question, which is outside of your purvey.
Correct.
But the state of Israel did do a good job there. Obviously, when we planned for you to come and do this, we thought we would just be talking about COVID and the pandemic and those regulations. But obviously, we had some issues there a couple weeks ago with Hamas and Gaza and firing rockets. So what can you tell us about safety in Israel? Because I'm doing Zoom calls with different groups that are planning on going, and that's the big question now. It's sort of like, what pandemic? Am I going to be safe when I go? So give us your perspective, and I guess how is the state of Israel going to maintain safety and make pilgrims feel welcome and secure? Yeah.
So first of all, we can't wait to have incoming travelers back. So once people land, I'm sure they're going to feel the excitement. Everyone in Israel has the hospitality industry and just people down the street who can't wait to talk to people from different countries. Mm-hmm. It's part of our cultures. We love face-to-face, and also this is why I'm here. I just couldn't wait to get out there. And we were talking about this before, and I will say that it was very upsetting to see what happened in Israel just over a week ago. But I can assure everyone that it's quiet now, and I understand the need to know and to feel that you and your group is safe. And I've said it many times in the past, but I will continue to say it. Israel is one of the safest places in the world. If you look at crime rates, if you look at statistics, as a woman, I have the ability to use that when I talk in presentations or now webinars with other women. Israel provides personal safety. You can go everywhere at any time and just feel secure, and that you can even walk alone in the middle of the night. So the ceasefire came into place. It's been quiet, and we're working on maintaining that quiet. So your groups will be safe in Israel, and once they land and they realize how safe it is, they're going to have an amazing time. And I was just saying that I envy your group going to Israel even before I do, because I haven't been home in a year, almost 2 years.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you mentioned the term FITs, and I don't know if all of our viewers here know what the term FIT. We know that in the industry, but those are basically individual travelers. So you've pretty much been in the same boat with the rest of us. You can't go back as just an individual traveler. So
Israelis have been able to go back whenever, but I would still have to go into quarantine. And again, things have changed so much this past year. We have been stricter. We went into lockdowns. Again, there is no right or wrong answer. And I think we all saw it this year. Different countries operated differently around the virus. We have countries like China and Australia that closed shop and will also not be allowing incoming travelers. We have countries that opened and then closed again because they saw it was not working. So as a travel professional, you can't blame anyone for acting wrong, because
Right.
destinations, that's our term for countries in the industry, destinations have been trying to do the best they could. Some of them are reliant more on tourism, and those were the ones trying to open up back sooner than later, but not everything worked. So once FITs are allowed back, I think that the quarantine will be lifted, taking in consideration that the person who's traveling is vaccinated. And I know it's been a hot discussion here because of the differences in Israel having not a governmental, but a different healthcare system. But we are, and you haven't asked me, but we are still asking that everyone who travel will be vaccinated. So I don't see that changing in the next couple of months, but as many things, it might change in the future. So we just have to be flexible.
Right. So you brought up the entry requirements. So everyone has to be vaccinated. Now, I know after my webinar last time, you had texted me and said, no, Johnson & Johnson is on the approved list. So
Correct.
Tell us the approved list of vaccines, since the requirement will be someone to be vaccinated.
Correct.
So is it all three?
So not only that, I was on a call earlier with our Ministry of Health, and it's taking a step back. We are approving vaccines that are approved by the FDA and the European Union. So we currently have Pfizer and Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca.
Okay.
If more vaccinations will be approved by the FDA, they will also be approved by us. So these are the two organizations that we trust, that our Ministry of Health trusts. And if they are under those sets of approvals, we will approve them as well. So we might see others, joining the mix at a later stage.
Correct. So obviously everything it's an ongoing evaluation. So you may add more to the list going forward. But that was a big question last webinar, was the Johnson & Johnson, because I didn't hear that from the Ministry of Tourism when I was there in Jerusalem. So and so things go forward. That's great news.
If it's FDA, we're in the States, so let's talk about our reality here. If it's FDA approved, that vaccine will be approved.
And ultimately, I think I said last webinar, no one really asked to see my vaccination card when I came. I mean, it came down to the serological test. And you all want to make sure, the Ministry of Health wants to make sure that someone coming has those antibodies for COVID. So, and that should be the case for anyone that's received the vaccine. But can you give us an update on the serological test and how that's going to work?
So we are requiring a PCR test up to 72 hours. That's very common. So
that's common for
that's why you
pretty
have
much anywhere you're going.
Anywhere. But because we want to make sure people have the antibodies, we're requesting an antibody test or serological test, however you want to call it. Because even if someone had COVID or gotten the vaccine, but they don't have antibodies, it puts them and the citizens of Israel at risk. And while it's uncomfortable, and let's face it, traveling now for the next couple of months is going to have a lot of hiccups wherever you go. But I guess it's for the brave and courageous to travel now. People who want to be at the front of everything want to travel now, and I understand that feeling. But we are trying to make it an easier process. So we have been in touch with a few of the airlines. It's still ongoing, so I won't mention any names, but we're looking to see if we can have the antibody test prior to departure. So having the test in the US, and if we do that, people will know whether they have antibodies or don't have antibodies. And while our Ministry of Health is conservative, they do not want to surprise anyone. They're also people. They're people who travel. So they want to make sure that the people know before they travel. We're trying our best. Again, that demand might change in 6 months, 2 months, 6 months, a year from now, but it's still something that our Ministry of Health wants to see. And we, on our end, are trying to see how we can make it easier for travelers.
Right.
So I hope to have an update. We still don't have a timeline because it does require the airlines to work with labs that are also approved by our Ministry of Health. So there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle.
Right. So when let's say the serological test does not happen before they leave, and we actually have Dean Nicholas is joining us here, and Dean's is the tour host for the group going on June 3rd. So he's obviously very interested in this question. So Dean and his group of 17, when they get there, what do you think they're going to be doing? And again, this could change in the next 2 weeks, but
Be doing in terms
of the serological testing.
So with groups that are going to Israel in scope of the pilot, they will have to take the antibody test in Israel. And unfortunately, if you receive a negative test, meaning you don't have antibodies, you will have to go to quarantine. That's only for the pilot. Again, it's a high conservative pilot, but it was laid out it's very black and white. That's what the Ministry of Health decided. I don't know if that will be there when we ease regulations some more. I guess that the next few weeks will tell us a lot.
Right. But are you expecting the finger prick test to be in place for the pilot, or? Yeah. At the airport, and then
I believe that's how they.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then and of course you have to get a PCR test once you get there, like I did when I was there a couple weeks ago.
Correct.
There, so you have a PCR test here and there, plus the serological test there.
Correct.
And there's still the health document to be filled out 24 hours before departure.
Yes, but that's just a form that you have to fill with your personal information.
Right. For contact purposes. Right. Okay. Anything else on the entry process that you would tell us that you see now or potentially coming?
I'll just say that our airport is doing its best to work with this pilot. It's the first time we're going to be welcoming incoming travelers who are not Israeli and also didn't get approval because their family is in Israel or Israeli. So I'm sure it's going to be an experience, and I wish I could be there on the ground because I love seeing new things. And I really hope that the next few weeks will show positive results, so we could also on our end ease restrictions and allow more people to come in.
Now, the statement I made to groups is, and I told Dean, and we'll talk to Dean here in a little bit, but what I told them was, I think, the airport looks a little different. It was well managed when I went through. But I think after you get out of the airport, everything's pretty much going to be normal.
Right.
Israel's still Israel. The hotels are still the hotels. Food's still great.
We're the same. We haven't changed.
Yeah,
We're just more eager to welcome you guys. Things have changed in terms of there are still masks indoor that might change beginning June 1st.
Right.
So we'll keep an eye on that, and I'll of course update you on that. But still the same. Groups are going to have designated places in restaurants, but it just means that there's going to be, like here in the restaurants, a plastic see-through barrier if you want to call it that way. And they will have their own section in the hotel. But besides that,
right. And you see that in restaurants here. You see the plastic barriers and
Yeah.
things. So I mean, it's normal these days. Social distancing.
I feel that everywhere, sorry to interrupt, but I feel that everywhere around the world, there's this unspoken language of we've all went through it, and masks are masks wherever you go. The see-through plastic barrier is there wherever you go. Doesn't matter if it's Canada, US, Israel, or France. So there's this kind of unspoken language. People get each other, and also.
But it didn't look like there were any masks required on public busing. So I would suspect on a private bus you wouldn't have to wear a mask.
So because the group is together, I think that they will be able to be without their mask when they're in their pod.
Yeah, on the bus and when they're together. And obviously no masks outdoors anymore in Israel.
Correct.
So you really, and the indoors could change. So it really could be pretty much back to normal as anything is anymore post-pandemic.
Right.
So what about the land borders? Because we've had a couple questions here this morning on the land borders.
Yeah, the land borders and Bethlehem.
Well, and Bethlehem. But let's start with the land borders first. And obviously any timetable that clearly not during the pilot, we know that. But has there been any discussion of when, the Allenby Bridge might reopen, between Jordan and Israel, or the exit to Egypt for that matter too?
So there have been discussions throughout this entire year between the different authorities, and also between the our incoming travel association and the Palestinian incoming tour operator association. There is still no timeline. I wish I could give you other news, but there are discussions. There have been discussions throughout, again, it's been more than a year, but the communication has been open. So that was important for us. And once we have a timeline, hopefully in the nearest future, we will update.
Yeah. And you think that would, in my mind, that would probably move pretty quickly.
Again, it all depends on the next.
But it depends on
few
the pilot.
weeks.
So.
We're all waiting.
We need for all those groups to behave and do well.
And we needed the early groups to want to be adventurous and be the first to go. And luckily, we had so much pent up demand. We were allowing 20 groups. We had many more DMCs in Israel register, and some of the initial group had to opt out, so people got bumped, and everybody's just been so excited, so eager. So in that sense, it just showed us that people are ready, even though it's a little bit more tricky. And I really do feel, I know that the process is a process. You have, PCR test before you go, and another 2 tests when you arrive, but we've been through so many different things this year, and 3 more steps are not going to stop people from traveling.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So let me ask, I saw in the media here the last couple of days about, we talked about everyone need to be vaccinated, but there's also been in the language that if folks had recovered from COVID, that they would be eligible to travel. And I would assume that means without a vaccine. Can you clarify that, or is it strictly?
It's strictly vaccinated.
Vaccinated
right now.
So the media is not getting it right in Israel.
I didn't see the articles you're referring to.
I was the Times of Israel and Haaretz both sort of left that vague. So I didn't know if there was an official change or
no, not an official change. Okay. Maybe with conducting the antibody test here, we will be able to change that.
Okay.
But there is no formal change.
Okay. Now, our group that's leaving on July 6th, and I know we have some of those guests traveling watching here today.
June or July?
In July.
Okay.
And I mean, we're assuming everything goes well with the pilot.
Gotcha.
and things reopen on July 1, but they're very interested because they have to make a decision here pretty quickly. We have, out of the 36 folks, we have 9 that are 21 or younger. and there's a 10-year-old, there's a 9-year-old. What's the policy on children? Because I don't know if we've even started vaccinating the 12 to 16-year-olds here in the country. So are they just out of luck or?
So the thing is, the policy, what you call a policy for children, for us is just, we're only allowing vaccinated travelers right now.
Right.
So if the vaccine will be available for 1-year-olds, I'm just exaggerating, they will be able to travel. For now, it's very strict. It's very cut. Only vaccinated people can travel. And I really hope that with the start of vaccinations,
Missed that. Put it on your phone, listen. Says you're no good to watch, you might as well be on your phone.
Guys, your main speaker is muted.
our speaker's muted?
No, we're fine.
Okay.
Someone was talking out there, didn't realize they were.
The only exception we allowed this year was for people who have immediate family in Israel. And let's say it's an immediate family member who's getting married or, God forbid, passed away, or a birth of a grandkid. Like, it was very, very specific. Or if they have family that are in Israel for on a special visa, so a clergy visa or teaching in Israel. But those were the only exceptions. Except for that, everyone is equal.
Okay. And that makes sense. I just, they want me to ask you that question.
I know, it's
so I
okay.
said, I will ask that
I'm
question.
not afraid of tough questions.
Yeah. No. I knew you weren't. So I just, but I wanted them to hear that because I didn't 100% know the answer. And I appreciate you doing that. Now, if someone, God forbid, someone catches COVID there, what is the policy?
So
what's going to happen to them? Because that's another question. Like, what happens if I get it there?
So similar to if your antibody test comes back negative, if you attract COVID, you personally will have to go into quarantine.
Okay.
For
10 days or
correct.
The normal.
Correct. The normal, what is currently asked by our Ministry of Health. Yes.
Right. Which is it 10 days or 14 days?
It's currently 14 days.
14 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the two main obstacles were if your antibody test comes back negative, meaning you don't have antibodies, or if you attract COVID, those were laid out very strictly for the pilot. I'm not sure what will be after June 15th, or it will be longer. But from the two, if you attract COVID, it makes sense health-wise to go into quarantine. I don't think that the rest of the group has to go into quarantine, but if you show symptoms or test back positive, you will have to go into isolation. Well,
if the numbers stay where they are now, which is obviously the goal, I mean, I think you're having less than 20 cases a day, 20, 30, so in the whole country.
Right.
I mean, I think we have a lot more than that just here in the city of Lakeland. So on a given day. So I mean, you'd have to be really unlucky to catch it in the current environment in Israel. So,
if you go to Israel, you're safer COVID-wise, maybe than many places here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I felt 100% safe, and when I was there. So, let me see. I think that answered all the questions that we had. Tom, are we getting any more questions?
We've got a couple more there, James. Just what does cost, Yael, for the PCR and the serological test? Do you have any idea?
So they're now, I heard there's still no fixed costs, but I believe it's around the $50, $60.
Okay.
Converting it into dollars.
Okay. Each are combined.
I think combined.
Combined.
But I can follow up on that specifically.
Okay.
I think that's still, obviously the first groups are just there. So there are private ways to get a PCR test, which are more expensive.
Correct.
And then when I was there, I went to the airport at Ben Gurion and went through their PCR testing. And that was like 48 shekels, for getting the results 24 hours later.
Right. So
and that was a very quick process.
So the PCR, what was laid out at the beginning was it was 48 shekels or 150 shekels.
Mm-hmm. If you needed it faster.
If you need it faster, correct.
Right.
The antibody will be a little bit more expensive, and that's the estimate I gave you.
Uh-huh.
But because of the need to wait after the antibody test itself and the costs, that's where we're doing our best and working with some of the biggest airlines in the U.S. to try and see if we can help travelers, because the American market is super important for us. Was our number one market and will remain our number one market. And we're doing everything we can to ease the process that has more steps wherever you go at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So just try to make it a little bit easier.
And if someone is quarantined,
Correct.
the cost for that is covered by their travel protection insurance. Is one of the questions that we're having. Is that how that happens? I guess that can be referred to either you or James. So,
yeah, the way we've answered that question before is it has to be a strict quarantine. It can't be
right.
Oh yeah, go to the hotel and that needs to be you're in the hotel and you're quarantining.
You're quarantining your room.
You're quarantining your room. That's the doctor. That's the doctor's orders. And that's covered. But if it's sort of a suggestion you go do something, that's not going to be covered.
Right.
And again, that, depends on the insurance policy, but on the TripMate one that we have, that was how that question was answered. Yael, it does raise another question. Obviously they get the PCR test, the serological test somewhere. At the airport, as we know it now for the pilot group. They go to the hotel and they wait for the results. Can you tell us how that's going to work?
So they will have to wait for the results, and we're working now on the number of hours or that time frame when they will have to wait at their hotels. And again, that's why we're trying to see if we can do it pre-boarding. But there are a few hours of waiting in the hotel.
And most of the flights from the United States arrive 4 to 6 p.m. So most people aren't doing any sightseeing anyway. So that's not really a big imposition. But theoretically, they're going to go straight to their hotel, check in, have dinner, and then they'll wait the results before they leave the next morning.
I haven't even thought about it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, I know that's what I did personally a couple weeks ago. So
yeah, if you arrive in the afternoon, you just wait and you should be good to go by the next morning.
By the next morning. Okay. That is the plan.
Right. But in order to travel, again, for this pilot, for the next couple of weeks, you do need to show proof of insurance that covers COVID.
Right.
So that's important. Correct. Again, I think it's important for anyone traveling internationally now because the virus doesn't have boundaries. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about travel to Israel, so we're asking that as of now.
And you have the ministry in Jerusalem has asked us for that proof for Dean's group here. So anything else you tell us about safety or any other questions, Tom?
No, the only one that came up here was about Bethlehem, and Yael said we really don't know what's going to happen there.
Correct.
Yet, so we just have to wait.
Correct.
Yeah. Right. And obviously, but Yael, I think it's safe to say that everyone in the Israeli Ministry of Tourism understands how important Bethlehem is to the Christian groups.
100%.
And that you're doing everything you can to work those details out.
Correct. Correct. It is out of our jurisdiction, but I don't know how I can stress it more about how we understand the importance of groups who want to travel Bethlehem as well. So it's in the works.
Good. Okay. Well, I appreciate your time coming today and letting us know how everything's going to work from the official perspective. And everyone can rest assured that Yael takes good care of us and giving us the latest information. And we appreciate all your diligence in doing that and getting everyone safely to Israel, to the airport, and then on their way out. So, Yael, we appreciate it. And she's going to stay with us. Today we're also joined by Dean Nicholas from Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy. And Dean is our tour host for our pilot group that's going. Dean, when are you leaving there? And welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks.
So
we're leaving on June 3rd, so right around the corner. We're last stages of getting everything ready.
Fantastic. Is everyone excited about going?
They are. We've been working. I'm actually head of school at an independent school in Cincinnati, and I've been working with a cohort of teachers where they've been doing training, in-depth Bible theology, faith development to help kind of train all our teachers about how to do our work better. And so part of being in that program was going to the Holy Land together. We were supposed to go last spring break, but then with the pandemic, that changed. And then we were hoping to get that in as soon as we could this spring break, and then that wasn't possible. So we're leaving. Our school week ends this week, and so it's been a difficult school year for everyone. And we said this would be the best way to celebrate, to go spend time together in the Holy Land.
Good. Dean, how many, I know you travel with a lot, and we were talking on the phone the other day, and I've actually never met Dean in person all the times he traveled with us. So I'm hoping maybe if I can get permission to go back into Israel again, I'll get to meet Dean actually in person. But how many trips have you led to the Holy Land?
It's terrible to say this, but I go back and count. It's 15 or 16. I started taking school groups in 1997. And I got to travel as part of the America-Israel Friendship League as a senior in high school. And that was a life-changing thing for me. And I thought I want to get as many of my students to experience Israel firsthand. So I've been taking students, parents, alumni, teachers, as many people as I can over the last couple of decades. That's
fantastic. And so it was really surprising to me, Dean. I mean, talking to you, you've been obviously that many times, so you know, but everyone seems so excited with the group to be going. And like you said, it's been a tough year, but any concerns about, safety or what you're going to experience there, or you're just ready to go?
For me personally, there's none at all. No one's looking forward to extra layers of things to do with COVID. But as far as the security situation, I actually teach a class at my school, Israel in the Modern World, where we talk about the political situation and the dynamic of that. So I've done a lot of background work with my group just to understand the dynamics of that situation. And that my first trip to Israel was right before the first Intifada. I took a J term with students during the 2009 Gaza conflict and had our head of school with us. And I said, what happens on the ground in Israel and what it's like for tourists versus what you see on a 30-second clip on CNN is very different. And so these teachers have known me a while. They know I travel a lot. And so they're taking my word for it and they feel comfortable. So we're really excited.
Good. And we're just really excited you're going. So that's and playing this really vital role, as we've all learned. A little pressure on you, Dean, to make sure everything goes well there. The whole world's sort of hinging on it. So we really appreciate you continuing to travel. What's your favorite location in the Holy Land? Just curious.
That's a great question, and it has two layers. One that people would probably expect. Walking the old city of Jerusalem is always such a highlight for me. And I feel like I could spend days in just exploring and walking the Via Dolorosa. To me is such a powerful thing. One of the more off the beaten path things we do, because I have my students read James Mitchner's The Source, which I recommend. And I always say I should get some kind of royalties for all the people I've gotten to buy that book on my trip. Because of that, both Megiddo which the book is loosely linked. It's historical fiction. But we're also probably one of the very few Christian groups to go to Safat. But when we look at the development of different movements in medieval Judaism and kind of that story of Israel's independence as well, Safat is a great place. We're not going on this coming trip, but it's a place I also really love. And for those who are doing tours and haven't been there before, it's well worth seeing.
That's fantastic. So any other things? I don't think I've ever had anyone say Safat as a favorite place. I mean,
It is a magical small city in the north of Israel. So definitely off the beaten path. And it is very Jewish, very spiritual, kind of hippie, a lot of artists, a lot of Judaica, which is folk Jewish art. Super interesting. So great answer.
Yeah. And I actually probably most of the folks on this webinar know Safat, but they may not. But usually when the guides are there and they point out the city on the hill, they're pointing towards Safat.
Right.
So I mean that's where they're pointing, and that's the hill there from the Sea of Galilee you can see, and that's probably what Jesus was referencing when in that story. So
It's a beautiful artist colony there as well, and I have this hanging on my wall, which makes me always. This is from an artist in Safat, and so I see that every day in my office.
Fantastic. What else are you looking forward to, Dean, on the trip?
I lost you there 1 second.
I said, what else are you looking forward to? And for the rest of the other 16 of you traveling, let me ask this. It's their first trip to Israel, correct?
Everyone's first trip but mine.
Okay. So it's always interesting. I don't know. I find it this way, but and you probably do too. I mean, it's always really interesting to see the reactions of people who are making their first visit.
Yeah. I told them that our last meeting, we have one tonight, and I said, you know what? For me, bringing like family or friends or colleagues I know well and kind of seeing it again through their eyes is always such a powerful thing. I was able to bring my children when they were kind of in that 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and seeing it through their eyes was such a moving thing for me as a parent. And I feel that way with colleagues and faculty. And so they're really excited. I've tried describing kind of what it'll be like as we see different places. But the other thing that I'm really looking forward to is I so love the food. And the Jerusalem bagels outside the Damascus gate, that always, that's when I know it feels like I'm home. So I'm looking forward to eating back in Israel.
I was wondering, I always enjoy, I mean, after going 15 months without hummus from Israel, wow.
Don't get me started.
I couldn't eat enough. It was like, just keep bringing it. So I was there a couple of weeks ago, Dean. I know exactly what you're saying about the food. So I was wondering if that was going to be on your list. There. So, Dean, I really appreciate you joining us today. I will say that the Ministry of Tourism, Yael's director in New York, had asked if media could check in on the group. So you might see, quotes from Dean and the media here in the U.S. in a couple of weeks. So we're pleased that he was willing to do that. And we're going to try to keep up with Dean via video or whatever we can do. We're still working out how to get there ourselves. So we'll try to get some interviews and things from Dean and his travelers while they're there. So you get a sense of what Israel is like now. And it's odd that no one's been there in 15 months. So you're sort of pioneers for us, and we're probably all going to be hanging on all the words you tell us as you go. So we appreciate you taking the lead in this and being one of those 20 groups from around the world. So
well, we feel honored and excited and look forward to getting back to Haaretz and to experience it and take my faculty. So we're honored to do the role.
Fantastic. Well, Tom, I think that's all we have today, unless you have other questions there.
No, none's popped up that I saw, James.
Okay.
So Dean, thank you. Yael, thank you. James, Creative Services team, John, Shelby, Ryan, and everybody's made this possible. Everybody out there, thank all of you for joining us. We'll be getting back with you. Watch for an email. As James said, we're trying to get over there. Hopefully we'll be able to send you back some information, at least from Dean and his group, and maybe some from us personally if we get to Israel. Also, we're hoping to have some footage from our groups in Athens in a week or so. So be aware of that. Watch the Facebook page. I know the Egypt fam people have been posting like crazy on their trip, and Dubai, and when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I know. So travel is opening up. We're excited. We want you to go with us. We hope that we're answering your questions. If there are other things that we can help you with, please let us know. Reach out to us. Now, as you go in peace. God bless, and we will see all of you very soon. Take care. Bye now.